When I started learning API testing, the videos I saw usually started from how to set up the automation tool. And my problem at the time was I didn't know how my application's web services were working. And it took me some time to figure that part out. And asking developers at that time was not in the cards either. So that's why in this API testing sessions, that's where we are going to start from, as to understand how your application's web services are set up and which calls you need to test to automate your API testing. If you're not sure about what API testing is or why would you want to do API testing, I'm adding a few links in the description below. So first we'll look at understanding how web services are working in the application under test and sniffing those API calls. The next section would be about finding out among all the traffic that we've captured which portion of the tests we need for our tests. And lastly, we'll try to replicate those API calls ourselves and confirm our understanding about the test calls we think we need to test. All you need for this tutorial is the browser Firefox and a Chrome extension called RestLet. There are a lot of tools out there which you can use to sniff API calls and construct them. Postman is also a very famous one. We have been using that, but for this video we are using RestLet. Now let's get to it. So the first section of the video is sniffing API calls, and we will be doing that using Firefox developer tools. So this is our sample application, storedemoqa.com, and the website has a shopping cart and a login feature, and we are going to use these to demonstrate how we can capture and send API requests. So for sniffing a HTTP request, we'll be using Firefox's web developer tools. I'll go to web developer and network, and this tab is going to show any traffic that's going on between the client and server side. Now when I click the my account link, you can see a bunch of requests are being shown here, and any traffic that's going on is displayed, and within each I can go through the details of each one of them. So now we move on to the next section where we would learn how to identify API calls we need to perform the required transaction on our application. So let's look at a sample request here, and I'm going to click on one of the requests, and you can see there are a bunch of tabs. The header tab has some basic information and the response, some response details. The response body, however, is in a separate tab under this called response payload. The header tab has a lot of other information like the request URL, which is where the request was sent, the request method type. There are a few famous ones or most commonly used ones: get request and post request, and the address. And the response headers are also shown in the headers tab here. There is a option of edit and resend. You can resend requests, but however we would be using a separate tool. Now let me clean the requests that I'm seeing here, so that when we perform an action on the website, we can see what requests were generated just for that from that click. And just to show that one click on the user interface does not mean there would be just one HTTP request generated. There would be multiple requests, and the trick here is to find out which request we are looking for. We go to the login page, and you can see again we have a bunch of get requests here in our network tab, and we look for the login request, which is here, WP login. You can see the header has a 200 response, and the response payload is showing the HTML page we are seeing in front of us right now. I have to mention here that this website we are using is a sample website, so probably the username and password here would be appearing in the request that we are sending the server side. Traditionally, if this were SSL certified website, you won't be seeing that information going into the get request or the post request. So now we clear our session and click on the login button, and you can see, so we are logged in on the website. And so this would be a post request since we are sending data. And here again, WP login is the message, and you can see there's some information in the cookies, and the parameters is showing the login username and password which we just sent. The response tab here is not showing anything. Instead, there's another get request with the profile.php page, and you can see that the HTML page we are seeing right now is sent in that response. Again, this might not be the best application or the best way to do this, but we're just using this as a sample to illustrate how messages are sent and received. So now we reached the last section of this video, which is how to construct API calls. We would be trying to send API messages that we just saw for our sample application. We'll construct the messages ourselves and verify that we are receiving the same response we are expecting. The tool used here would be RestLet, which is an extension on the Chrome browser. Postman is also a very famous one. The user interface for most of these is pretty much similar, so if you learn how to use one of them, you can use any other tool as well. So now this is a Chrome extension called REST API testing. I have installed this extension already. You would see an icon here on the top right of your browser. So let's open this extension. So the main sections in this user interface we are seeing is the method type, which you can see in the top right corner. This is a get method we are looking at right now. Then we have the URL, and below that is the details of the message or request we are going to send. And pretty straightforward, just the headers section and the body section. The header section has a format, and it could be in raw as well. The only difference is raw does not have formatting, pretty much the same thing. So now I'm going to start the login process again, and we are going to copy the request messages in RestLet and do the API calls ourselves. So the first step was opening the login page, and I just clicked there to open the login page, and we're finding the get request. So this is the request which loaded this page. I'm going to copy the headers in raw format. It's easier, then you don't have to worry about syntax errors. So I've copied that. This is a get method, so there won't be a body for this, and then the URL would be where we want to send the request, and that's it, just send. And we got a 200 OK response, which means that the request was processed, and in response you can see we're seeing the HTML page, and the response headers that we have here and the response payload, which is the body, are matching what we saw in RestLet. So now we are going to open the login page, and I just click the login button there, and the requests are, you can see the requests that were generated. Now WP login is the page that we have right now, so that's the request we are looking for. This is again a get request, and we're going to copy the raw headers of the request here again, and we can overwrite the existing request we sent in RestLet, and the URL would be the next step, wp login.php. the request type is a get request method. That's why we won't have a body. I'm just going to click send here, and we would then wait for the response from the server. So here we go, we have a 200 OK response, and we don't see an error here, and the HTML page is loaded. So let's do the last step, which is enter the username and password to log in into the website. And if you remember from our discussion earlier, this is not an SSL secure website, so we would be seeing the username and password in the request. Let me clear the previous requests, and here we go. Again, this would be a post request because we are sending data, and that again depends on how you are developing the website or the service. So the WP login was the page that we are looking for, and a post request, so it's the one above this, right? And let's copy the headers here, and we can replace them in RestLet with the previous request. We don't need that anymore. And the URL, the request method would be post, and since it's a post request, we would be needing the body there. You can see the username and password. I've copied that in the body, and I think our request is good to go. We can just send this, and we should be seeing a 200 response. There we go, 200 OK response, and we are seeing the HTML page. There are quite a few ways authentication works, and there are some standard formats for doing that, and some people have some customized methods even for that. We'll talk more about authentication as we move on in this series. The whole exercise for this video was to understand which API calls are important for our test, and then develop a hypothesis as to what information we need to send and what should be the response that we are receiving back, and test that hypothesis with any other tool by constructing that service or that request ourselves. And once we have that in place, then we can talk about automating those specific tests. I'm hopeful this would have been useful, especially for testers who are looking at how to automate their API testing. And if you have any questions, add them in the comments below. For our next video, we'll be working on how to start off with our automation project, setting that up and writing a GET request. We'll be using Rest Assured for that purpose. If you haven't already, do subscribe to the channel and join the movement of redefining software quality with us. Stay tuned and talk to you next time.